Today we are learning chapter 2 of Tanya. Let's discover the godly soul. Yesterday we discovered the animal soul. It's time to tap into our godly soul. So let's look at the Hebrew together, as this is a famous quote from Tanya. Hanefesh hashenis be'Israel, hi helek eloka mimal mamish. The second soul of a Jew is a part of God. Literally, the word mamish is there, in case you thought this was a joke or just metaphorical. No, we are literally a part of God above. Let's look at a source for this in the Chumash. So how did the first person, Adam, get his soul? Is we know that it says that he blew into his nostrils a soul of life. So the Zohar comments on this, that he who blows from within. Meaning I could just keep on talking, Thank God, just talk all day long. But if I'm going to blow, I need to then take a moment to actually recharge. Why? Because when a person blows from within, it's touching on their innermost aspect. It actually takes a whole other level of effort, and it's actually emptying the lungs because it comes from such a deep place, that blowing out. Meaning that when God blew the soul into Adam, he didn't just speak into Adam. Speaking is a very shallow form of breath. He blew it into Adam, meaning he blew from his innermost depths, meaning the soul, the breath of life was coming from God's essence. Allegorically speaking, the Jewish souls arose in the divine thought. So let's think about what divine thought is for a second. Thought is a revelation to self. Thank God no one can hear my thoughts, right? Sometimes we are super grateful for the fact that thoughts are just our own. So thought is an internal panimi expression to oneself. And so inward expression to oneself. It's the idea that we arose in God's thought shows that we are coming from God's innermost aspect. And the quote associated with this is, Israel is my firstborn son. Okay, so hold out for a second. Israel's my firstborn son. We're going to talk about it in a moment. And now we're going to talk about every Jew as individuals. The Alter Rebbe brings a different quote. You are children unto God, your Lord. The significance of Jews being called God's child is that just as a child is formed from the father's brain, as this is a spiritual source of male seed. So pause for a second. Yes, that's what we're saying, that the spiritual source of male seed is actually coming from the father's brain. So his inner and essential being, right, one's brain, one's intellect, so too is the soul of every Jew derived from God's thought and wisdom. Just as a child is derived from their father's DNA, which we're saying the spiritual source of that is in the father's brain, so too we are all God, children to Hashem are God, which means we come from God's thought and wisdom, God's innermost being. Hold up a second. That's nice. That's showing us how we come from God's wisdom. And to be from God's wisdom, well, that sounds really lofty and awesome. But that's still God's wisdom. That doesn't say to me that I'm coming from God's essence. So how do we get the essence aspect? To understand that, we need to appreciate how God's wisdom is not like my wisdom at all. God's wisdom is touching on God's essence. God is one with his wisdom. So we're going to have a Rambam, Maimonides moment to understand that. Quote from Maimonides, okay? The Rambam. For he is wise. God possesses the quality of wisdom, but not with a wisdom that is known to us created beings. Because he and his wisdom are one. And as Maimonides writes, he is knowledge and simultaneously the knower. Right? So God is the knowledge and the knower. This means that God's wisdom and comprehension are totally different from man's. Right? So in human comprehension, there are three separate distinct components. A, the person's soul, the knower, the possessor of knowledge. Right, the one who's knowing something. B, the power of intellect and comprehension, the knowledge by which the person knows, right, the power of intellect. And C, the subject of the knowledge, the known. Concerning God's wisdom, however, Maimonides states, he's the knowledge, the knower, and the known. God is the means of comprehension, the knowledge. At the same time, he is who understands the knower, and also that which is understood, the known. So one analogy I heard from Rabbi David Aaron here is that this is what's happening. God is the author of the book. God is all the characters in the book, and God is the one reading the book at the same time, right? Mind blown. This is not something that I as a human being can understand. Why? Because me and my knowledge are separate. Knowledge is something that's separate from us. There's the aspect of ourselves that's knowing it, the power of intellect. There's our own being, which is knowing something. And then there's the thing outside of ourselves, which is the thing that's being known. But by God, this is all happening simultaneously. God is the knower and the knowledge and the known. So meaning we're understanding that for God, to say that we're from God's wisdom is something that is one with him, right? Wisdom is not just a soul power that he pulls out the way we pull out the power of intellect when we need to. It is actually one with God, as he is the knower, the knowledge, and the known. So to say that we come from God's knowledge is saying that we're coming from God's essence. Maimonides continues, and this is not the power of any man to comprehend clearly. Good, because I don't. As is written, can you find and understand God by searching? Right? I'm going to use my intellect to understand God. Like, pause for a second, okay? This is one of my favorite studies. There is a study done in the United States where they want to see, like early 1900s, something like that. They want to see what is the smallest fish in the ocean. So they got these 3-inch fishing nets, right? Those were their size. The huge fishing nets with 3-inch holes. And they dragged it through the ocean. And they concluded that there are no fish smaller than 3 inches. Why? Because the smallest fish they could catch was 3 inches. Meaning, of course, there's fishes smaller than 3 inches. You have one in your fish tank at home. But because that was their instrument, that's the only thing they could detect. I cannot use my instrument called knowledge to try to catch godliness, right? I cannot use that to apprehend godliness because it's not the fitting instrument. So of course, as Eve, Job said, can you find and understand God by searching? No, I cannot use this instrument of intellect to try to apprehend the source of life. As it is also written, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, Isaiah. Since God's wisdom is one with God himself, as being shown, it follows that the Jewish soul which stems from divine wisdom actually derives from God himself, as God is one with his wisdom, and we derive from God's wisdom, so we are one with God. That's how the Alter Rebbe is saying here, bringing this quote that we are literally a part of God. In conclusion, the Tanya offers us 2 metaphors to illustrate the intimate union of the divine soul with God. 1, it is blown from God's innards, right? Someone who blows from within, from their depths. And B is derived from our soul is derived from God's wisdom, which is totally one with him. So we are slowly getting it through our minds and hearts and souls and being, yes, we literally are part of God. And yes, this is a huge identity shift. This is one of the huge identity shifts of the Tanya that the Alter Rebbe wants us to associate with the godly soul. Who am I? I am the Nefesh Elokee. I am the divine spark of God. That is the true I. That is the true identity. And not I in terms of ego. No, I as in when we realize that we're part of God, that is a state of egolessness. That's a space of freedom, of just being free to be part of the divine. So now we're going to talk about how there are lots of different ranks of souls, okay? And the Lashon here is ad infinitum, okay? Infinite levels of souls. And all the souls of the Jewish people comprise one body. This is absolutely beautiful analogy for the Jewish people. We comprise one body. So that means there's going to be a head, and there's also going to be the toes, yeah? And in every so the generation of the patriarchs and matriarchs, our mothers and fathers, are like Avram, Yitzchak, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Rivka, Rachel, Yaakov, Leah. Sorry for whoever okay, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Okay, our matriarchs and patriarchs, they represent the head of the Jewish body, and our generation, which is called Igvisei de Mashiach. We are the souls of the feet. We're the footsteps of Mashiach. We're the last generation of exile and the first generation of redemption, of Geula. We are compared to the souls of the feet. They both have their advantage. Obviously, the head is higher, but also the head isn't going anywhere unless the soles of the feet take it there, right? Every single part of the body has a unique role, and we're grateful that we don't all have the same role. So if we look at ourselves as a Jewish people, I might be an elbow kind of Jew, but listen, elbows are essential, or I could look at someone and be like, what's it? Who are they? Just totally judge them and realize, wait a second, if we're all part of one body, they play an essential role to my own well-being. And so we cannot disparage anyone. Everyone in the Jewish people is playing their unique role. And thank God that we're unique, because we don't want 200 heads, We want everyone to be playing the exact role of this body for the ultimate wholesomeness and health of the Jewish people. So the difference in soul ranks is not just between generations, but it's also within a single generation. We are going to have someone needs to be the head and someone has to be the heels. So in each generation, there are those who are called the heads of the multitudes of Israel. So this is your Moshe Rabbeinu, okay? Moshe Rabbeinu is the head. In every generation, you're going to find a Moshe, because you cannot have a Jewish people without a head, because you cannot have a living, functioning person without a head. It's as clear as that. So in every generation throughout Jewish history, you can look and find the head, okay? You can find Moshe, okay? You can find Yeshua. You can find Rabbah, who we already spoke about. You can find Lubavitcher Rebbe. And every single generation, there is going to be the head of the Bnei Yisrael. And let's look at the word Rebbe for a moment. Rebbe is an acronym. Get ready for this. For Rosh B'nai Israel, right? Resh Bet Yud. The head, the Rosh of B'nai, of the children of Israel. That's literally our head. We need that head in order to function as a Jewish people. Here is some background knowledge for us. Every soul contains 5 parts. Right now we're going to talk about the 3 lower aspects. That is, the lowest aspect is the nefesh, which is bodily intelligence. The ruach is emotional intelligence. The neshama is consciousness, is intellect intelligence. Okay, is the intellectual aspect of our being, of our soul, is the neshama. So even when comparing the nefesh, right, we said the lowest bodily based intelligent aspect of our being, there's a different qualitative difference, meaning even at the lowest aspect of our soul, there's qualitative difference between different souls. Nevertheless, okay, the root of every nefesh, ruach, neshama, from the highest of all ranks to lowest, are all derived as a word from the supreme mind, which is Chachma Ilah, supernal wisdom. Meaning, doesn't matter who you are and how holy or unholy you feel. At the end of the day, we all come from the same root. Every single nefesh, ruach, neshama, we all have the same root in the living God, in God's Chachma Ilah, God's supernal wisdom. But then we have this question. So if all souls have the same source, then how are souls so unique in their abilities? If you hear background singing right now, that's awesome, because there's a musical Hallel for Hanukkah happening in the background. So that's the right type of background noise that we're going for here. So if all the souls have the same source, then how are souls so unique? How do you get some souls that are called the head and some souls that are called, the heel? Where does that come from? Okay, basically, we can, Alter Rebbe is going to compare this to how the DNA of the father, right, the initial seed that comes from the father's brain, it's going to end up into lots of different body parts, meaning it's going to end up in the head of the child and also the fingernails of the child. It's the same energy, it's the same life force, it's the same DNA, but it's going to form something that has much more revelation, such as the head, and something that seems much more like which is much more of a degradation, right, of that initial spark of DNA of the father's seed. So what happens is that through the mother's womb in those 9 months, that DNA forms into different aspects of the body, some being the nails and some being the head. So the Tanya now cites 2 sources for us that show us the relationship between the father's DNA and the child's nails. 1, as Gemara Nida says, from the white of the father's drop of semen are formed the veins, the bones, and the nails of the child. Right, that's where it's coming from. And 2, interestingly enough, Adam's garments in the Garden of Eden were of nails derived from the cognitive faculty of Bina. So the idea is that their garments were like nails, transparent, like that, and that it came from the cognitive faculty of Bina, meaning it came from, once again, from the mind. Okay? So how is this mirrored spiritually? Okay, so we still want to understand the idea of how do you have some souls that are the head and some souls that are the feet of this Jewish body, if really we're all rooted in the same source anyways. So it's a schlep, okay? We are coming from God's essence, like we're saying, but we don't just get plopped down here. Okay, here we are from God's essence. No, it's a journey through the 4 spiritual worlds to come into this world. So these 4 spiritual worlds are something we're going to be discussing through Tanya. Atzilus, most godly revelation, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. So in degrading order of godly revelation. So on the way down, some souls are hardly affected because they took the express train and they're just glowing with godly energy, and they just come completely remembering, I'm on a mission, I'm a soul, I'm here to serve God, I'm here to connect, I'm here to, add new light into the world. I remember where I'm coming from. Those are the heads of the Jewish people, right? They give us that clarity because they remember where they were coming from so easily. Other people, they take the local bus on the way down, okay? So they're going through the spiritual world, and they might spend lots of time in Bria. Oh, let's check out Yetzira. Oh, we're going to spend some time in Asiya. They're getting flavored and influenced by the different worlds, and that causes them almost this more of this worldliness or different personalities that are formed by our soul journey down. And this isn't a negative thing. This is exactly allowing us to tap into Hashem, who Hashem wants us to be. It's forming spiritual aspects of our personality also. So really, some souls, they show up here fresh and ready to go. Other souls, they just got off the local bus, okay? They are done. They need a refresher course on what the whole mission of coming to this world is about. Right? Get them some coffee, and then we can talk about what the mission is. So the souls that are most impacted by this descent remain bound, united in a wonderful and mighty unity with their original essence, supernal wisdom. Don't think that because it was such a schlep down here and they got so affected by it that they aren't still bound. Of course, they are still completely bound in their source. And how is this connection kept alive? This connection is kept alive through the head of the body. Through the head of the generation, our nefesh, ruach, neshama derive nourishment. Okay, so here's the idea. Is that we need to keep that inspiration alive. If I'm, coming down this whole spiritual journey and I'm going to be, the foot, the heel of this Jewish spiritual body, I'm going to need inspiration from the head to keep me on task in my mission, to give my nefesh, ruach, neshama energy while I'm here in this world, that godly energy, that godly recharge. And where does that come from? From the head. So clearly from the Rebbe, from the Rosh B'nai Yisrael, from the Moshe of the generation, who is at the head, who just is straight at Atzilus, clear vision of what we're doing here in this world. Right, we're all connected equally above. That's what we're saying. We're all rooted in the same place. But some people have a clearer vision because they are brought as the spiritual body. The Jewish people, they are the head. And as the foot, as the heel, I need that connection. And this explains the verse from our sages. And cleave unto him. He who cleaves into a Torah scholar is deemed by the Torah to have actually become attached to the Shekhinah, the divine presence. Right? How do I attach myself to the divine presence in this world? By cleaving to a scholar, someone who is able to infuse my nefesh, ruach, and neshama, these three aspects of my soul, with that godly recharge, right? When I'm cleaving to them, I'm not really cleaving to them to, be, a follower or a groupie, God forbid. I'm cleaving to them to get that godly recharge of reminding myself what I'm doing in this world and where I'm coming from. But what about those who willfully sin and rebel against the Torah sages, right? So how are they getting their nefesh, ruach, and neshama recharge? How are they getting this godly energy downloaded into their soul? So the nurture of their nefesh, ruach, neshama comes from a backhanded kind of way for the nefesh, ruach, neshama of the scholars. So they are still getting charged by the head of the Jewish body, right? The foot is going to get the energy from the head whether they like it or not. Either it's going to come in a way of face-to-face receiving an open relationship, or it's going to come in a backhanded way. But either way, that energy is flowing through. But of course, we want to be able to receive the energy in the most direct, clear, face-to-face, inward way of receiving their energy. It means open to receiving from the Rosh B'nai Yisrael, receiving the energy, that recharge for our nefesh, ruach, neshama. Then we're going to talk about soul garments. So every nefesh, ruach, and neshama, these three aspects of our soul, has a garment which stems from the nefesh of its father and mother's essence, okay? So, meaning this is a soul garment, like we're saying, this is not the soul itself, it's just a garment for the soul. The Zohar HaKodesh, the Holy Zohar, explained that through conducting oneself in a holy manner during relations, one draws down a holy soul garment for the child. So the moment the child is conceived, they're also creating in that moment the soul garment for that child. So how does a soul garment practically affect one's child? One, is that all the commandments that one fulfills are influenced by that garment. It's through this garment the soul achieves its ability to affect the body, to perform the commandments involving physical matters, meaning how translucent one is going to be able to feel godliness, if that's a thick soul garment, or if it's just a really clear, holy, pure soul garment, it's going to affect the way that they're going to be able to perform mitzvahs. And two, the benevolence that flows one to one from heaven is all given through that garment, because the soul is so strongly bound up with this garment, right? It's like, it's not like a big puffy outer coat. It's a garment. It's very, very close to the soul. So it's more like the undershirt here. It's not like there's different forms of garments. This is a garment that is very, very bound up with the soul. Zohar refers to the garment in the context as the person's soul. I mean, the Zohar knows that the soul and the soul garment are so bound up, it just literally calls it the soul, but it's not actually the soul. It's a garment of the soul, but they're so bound up. And so this has a great effect on a person's spirituality in this world. So the moral of the story is the essential factor is to conduct oneself in a holy manner during sexual union, as to draw down a holy garment for one's child, right? So that is part of the parent's responsibility. Education does not start when the child's 5 years old. It starts even when the child is being conceived, of what kind of soul garments are going to be drawn down for that child. Don't worry. Hold up a second. This does not affect the soul itself. It only affects the soul garments. So yes, the soul garments, like we saw from the Zohar, are very tied up with the soul itself, but the soul itself is always just as pure and connected as any other soul. We're all sourced in the same place. We're all sourced in God. Period. Exclamation mark. Okay? So this is how what happens is you could have like parents who are not trying to conceive in a holy way, or really the opposite, and yet they draw down an extraordinarily lofty soul. Like we saw, like Avraham was born to Terach, because even though Terach was not creating lofty soul garments for his child in the moment of conception, irregardless he was still able to draw down incredibly high soul, because all souls are high. Meaning that's what we're saying here. Like the soul itself is not is just as every single one of our souls is a part of God on high, literally, and we all have different soul garments, and those soul garments are really a huge part of our mission in this world. It flavors like our spirituality in many ways, but of course, like everything, we are children of Avram and Sarah. We are taken out of our destiny. Nothing is set in stone. L'chatchila, we want to conceive our children in holiness and purity, with the ultimate, give them the ultimate start in life, right? Just like we want them to go to good schools, we want to give them the best soul garments we possibly can. But ultimately, our soul and our destiny is in our own hands. Okay. Chapter 2, review. Time to internalize. Okay, I definitely need a review. These were a lot of awesome concepts. What is the second? So if you want to do this on your own, just pause it and do the questions and challenge yourself. And if you want to do it as I say the question, guess the answer, and then we'll check it together. What is the second soul of every Jew without exception? A part of God on high, literally, mamish. Why is it called the second soul? Because yesterday we learned about the first soul. The initial soul is the animal soul, and the second soul is the soul that is actually is interesting. The second soul, the godly soul, meaning our primal nature, right? That like instinct is from the animal soul, versus the second soul that we call this is something that's revealed to us throughout our life. So at the bris, meaning a child, in order to get their second soul, for a baby boy, it needs to have experienced a Shabbos. A Shabbos is when this godly soul starts to be experienced within the child. And so that's why a bris always has to be 8 days, because that means for sure, no matter what day of the week a child's born, they experience at least one Shabbos. Other reasons, but this is one of the reasons. So they experience at least one Shabbos, and therefore it was able to get their godly soul before their bris. The age of bar and bat mitzvah, girls already have that revelation because we holy like that, okay, immediately from being born. And at the age of bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah, that's when the godly soul becomes full on, not just like hovering outside the body, but like really like full on able to access it. And that's why we're able to start having mitzvahs, because we have full access to our second soul, our godly soul. Why is it so important to know that we're a part of God? Like, what does that do for you? Ask yourself for you. Like, what does it add to like knowing that you're a part of God? For me, it's knowing that no matter how much I fall on my face and how much I mess up, that there's always a part of me that is so connected to its source and so pure and so whole that cannot be touched and tampered with by anything in this world. And I have superpowers to call on, right? Wait a second. I am the Nefesh Elokis. I am a part of God. I can do this moment. I have been entrusted with this part of God, and therefore I have the power to overcome whatever I need to overcome in this moment. How did Adam receive his divine soul? So we said that Hashem blew it into him. And when someone's blowing, they're blowing from their essence, from their innermost part of their being. How is God's wisdom different from ours? Our wisdom is a faculty of our soul, something we pull out at moments. Okay, there's us and there's the faculty of knowledge. Versus Hashem and his knowledge and his power of knowledge, of intellect, is all one with his being. We have an essential parent-child relationship with God. Which verse teaches us about this? So we were saying that we are God, children to Hashem, our God, and that Israel is the firstborn son of God. Explain the analogy of a child coming from their father's wisdom. So we said that just like the male seed is spiritually composed in the brain, and therefore that energy goes, and it forms both the head, and it forms both the nails, it forms every single part of them, so too we are all sourced in God's wisdom. But the way that that energy is transpired is that our soul might go from God's wisdom into comprising the arm, or the leg, or the foot, or the nail, all different aspects, but we're all coming from the same source. How is this analogy true between our soul and God's wisdom? Oh, sorry, I just answered that. Okay, explain how the soul, the Jewish people comprise one body. So we said that spiritually is a very powerful concept. We are all one body. So we need to have the head, and we need to have all the arms. And our generation, we are Visei de Mashiach. We are the heels of that Jewish spiritual body, and we all are completely essential part of this body. Explain why some souls are compared to the head and others the heels. Okay, so this is really about the revelation that our soul has of like coming down, meaning some souls come down fresh and charged, and the way that they are in God's wisdom, the way that energy forms as it comes down is in like pure just divine revelation, like the head. And some of us, it's much more in a concealed way, right? The same way that the same DNA can create a head creates fingernails or toenails. It's the same thing. It's the same energy, but it's now being so condensed until it gets to the point of actually heels, the heel of the body. But there, like we said, the head can't go places without the heels, and the heels can't go anywhere without the head. Like all parts of the body are important. How do the heads of the generation nurture and energize our nefesh, ruach, and neshama? So the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of our being needs the energy from the head, right? Because after that long spiritual journey, we are spiritually exhausted, and we constantly need to be getting that recharge. As part of the heel of the Jewish people, I need that recharge from the head to have that, the energy to keep doing mitzvahs and keep just like our very physicality of our very life is dependent on that energy. Okay, and so we said that if someone doesn't want to receive it directly, they're going to receive it anyways, but an indirect way of much more concealment. How does a person receive their soul garments? Their soul garments are formed at the moment of conception. How does a soul garment affect the quality of the soul itself? Trick question. We said the soul itself is transcendent and is not affected by the soul garments. Yes, they are bound up, united in one. As they are in this world, they do have a huge effect on us, but the soul itself is not the garment. And that's how you can have an incredibly lofty soul born to parents who are not in a state of holiness or purity during the moment of conception. Thank you for taking the time to learn the Tanya with me.